on to the concept of classes in Python. So you might remember that in the introduction class, we were talking about features of Python which make it very it kind of appealing in a way and make it stand out from other programming languages. Like there are programming languages which implement classes as well, but yeah, Python also is not missing that feature out, right? So what basically classes or defining classes will do is it will structure your program very well. Okay, so so let me just first ask you if anybody knows a definition of a class or any vague idea about what classes are, and we can begin from that. So anybody uh, who has the answer or who knows about classes can share it in the chat. So to really start the conversation uh, and see how it basically improves programming and how it is now considered as breaking ground or OOPS concepts, that is object oriented programming concepts have been around for a long time now. So anybody who has an idea about classes, studied them previously in any other programming language, anyone? No one? If anyone has any idea, you can share it in the chat. Or is this concept totally new to you? So we'll start accordingly, like to just see your comfort level. Instance of variable, yes, Nandu, that is also correct. Yeah, you can define objects inside class. So what are the properties of these objects? So they share certain characteristics, right? So what a class will have certain objects which are similar in nature, which it can relate to easily. Like there should be a functional similarity, right? In the nature, it identifies with how it is treated in the practical world, so that it can be segmented into yes. So yeah, correct. Attributes is more correct, Padmavati. So we'll look into it. So uh, as Nandu told, you can define objects. So basically, in a class, you have while you define a class, you actually look for similarity in functionality or objects which can be identified to that class, right? So how you will get to know what I'm saying is basically when we see the code and we get down into it, but uh, the objects which are similar in nature or which can be grouped under a bigger class of objects, or so that it makes identification of code and look, you can just look at the code uh, at the high level and you can understand which kind of problem or which functionality the code is trying to address right there. Okay, so as I said, it helps in proper structuring of the code, and it helps in defining objects such that they are relatable to each other and can be grouped inside a bigger cluster, so that you can identify it with a particular functionality or with a particular use or utility. Okay, So we'll see how that is done. So so you can define many kind of objects in a class. Okay, so you can define variables, you can define functions, right? And those functions will be then particular to that class. And there are certain concepts regarding classes which are very useful. So one of those concepts is inheritance. So we will see how inheritance happens. First, just we will look at this simple class. So how we define classes by this keyword class, and then we say the name of the class. So we give the name here is shape. Okay, and then we define an attribute inside the class, which is color, and we give it the value black. Okay, in the string, so it has the string value as black, this variable color. So now next what we do, we can also define, as I said, a variable or a function inside the class. So we are you might recognize this def. Now whenever you see this def, you should recognize that what will follow it will be a function. Okay, and then we give the function name. Now this is again a user defined function, and inside the brackets we'll get to what self is later. Okay, so for now just ignore this self. Okay, and you just see the what inside the function is. You are just simply printing the color variable you have defined earlier. Okay, so this is a default or function in this class. Okay, so what we have created, this is user defined. So now uh, before so what before we get to the next lines, we should understand what basically inheritance is. Okay, so inheritance is when an a class can share uh, certain attributes or certain objects from a parent class. Okay, so how this parent child relationship is developed, we will see it here. Okay, so now this again should be when we define child classes, you should be uh, it should be identifiable easily. When you see the code, you should know what a child class is and how and why it is a child class, and why a certain class is a parent class. So there are certain attributes which a parent class should share with the child class for inheritance to happen. Okay, so now we are defining the child class here. Similar class definition which we had earlier. We say class rectangle, which is the name of the new child class. And how this inheritance happens is by using the parent class's name, shape, right? We gave the parent class here, we defined the parent class shape here in the so we give this name shape inside uh, these brackets. Okay, so the parent class, remember, always comes inside the brackets, and the child class is outside. Okay, so that's how the Python recognizes which one is a child class and which one is the parent class. Okay, so then just see the code as of now. So now this init function is used to for inheritance for these two lines of code. Just remember, this will remain same for any child class. Okay, so this basically is a common syntax which helps us in inheritance. Okay, this, so when you write these two lines of code, when you define this inbuilt function already, which is it is there in Python, and you write the next code as super dot init. Okay, so this inheritance function uh, will help the child class rectangle inherits the properties or and objects attributes from the parent class shape. Okay, so these two lines of code, you may see it somewhere down as well. So it remains the same, and it should be defined in every child class. Okay, so there is nothing to explain here because they are part of inbuilt functions in Python, and you have to define them for this child class to inherit attributes from the parent class. Okay, so this function and along with this super function dot init, it will help you in inheritance. Okay, so after this lines of code, this line, you can take for granted that this child class now has inherited all the objects of the parent class. Okay, so now for again, as I told you, please ignore this self. We will get to it later. Okay, so we are now defining attributes of the child class. Okay, so self dot length and self dot breadth, they are given some random default values which is equal to 0. Okay, so these are attributes of the child class, and they are not taken from the parent class. They are its own attributes or objects. Okay, variables. So we will so we'll move on to this function again. This is a function which is, you can see, ignore the cell for now. It's calculating area of the rectangle uh, by just multiplying length and breadth. Okay, length into breadth is area, and for now the default values are 0. Okay, so this, so now we get, we what we have is we have a parent class and its attribute color, and we have a function which we define to print that color. We have child class rectangle, which is inheriting from the parent class shape. We have we use this init function for inheritance to happen, and then we defined some attributes length and breadth inside the child class, which we are using in this get area function again to calculate area. Okay, length into breadth, and then we are just printing that area out. Okay, so are there any doubts till here? Are you guys getting the bigger picture on how and so you can now see that this rectangle is the child class for shape. Okay, so similarly we'll have one more child class going ahead. So as of now, is this clear? For now, just ignore this self for confusion. It can confuse you. Okay, so can we move on to the next block, or you guys have any doubt?
This may be a slightly challenging concept to pick it up in
Yes.
short time. So if you have any questions, please ask.
Um, Hi. This color black we attribute, no? It's just an example of an attribute, is it? Or is it like for a specific reason we are saying color black, or just to explain, or
Yes.
just to give some attribute to the class we are doing?
No. Yes, ma'am. Just it can be any attribute. So before, just for giving an attribute, we have given this what you call this attribute, this exact variable is color.
Okay.
It can take
There is
any
no
value,
other
Jennifer. You can keep it orange, you
yes,
can keep it
yeah,
red. We are just
okay,
initializing it with a simple
yes, yes,
value. That's all.
Okay.
yeah,
Thank
correct.
you.
This can have
Perfect.
any value. Thank you.
Good. Thanks for asking. Anyone else? Any questions? If there are no questions, we will safely assume that all of you have understood and we will proceed. Is that a good assumption to make for you? Please let us know. Can we proceed? Can we get a quick yes from everyone? Thank you, Vishnu. Okay, Nandu has a question. For what super brackets have been used?
Yeah, so as I told Nandu, this is an inbuilt function. That's why brackets are appearing here. Okay, so and it has an instance from for init as well. So this syntax is basically predefined in Python. So for inheriting attributes from a parent uh, class to a child class, you will use this what you call this syntax. So it's just a common syntax you just have to remember. So there is no such it's a function, and that's why this this brackets have come. Okay.
Just one
So
more doubt. That
yes, ma'am.
self dot length, why do we first assign it as 0? Is it
Yeah. So this is again a what you call a just for explanation I've assigned. So this also we can say we can give it as any other value like one or so if you see now I'll get to that. So the third block will basically explain. So
okay?
because I have to give some value to it, I just gave it 0.
Okay.
We can change those values after objects initiation. Okay. So we move on to uh, so let's first we what we'll do is we'll uh, let's try to okay, let's see this child class the second child class, which is circle. Okay, now similar thing will happen here. So if you see this is again a default value as radius. For radius I've given it as 0, and the same syntax which was for inheritance has been included here as well. Okay, I use the same thing for a rectangle, and same the circle can also be a child class for the shape parent class now after initializing or this init function. Okay, so again this is also a default value of 0 we have given, so we can change that. We will see how it is. So now if you see we defined a function get area in rectangle class as well, and you can see we defined the same function in the circle class as well. Okay, so so these this is the same function we have used it here as well. So but if you see the operation it is doing, it is different to what it was doing for the rectangle. Okay, so this is how the class concept is helping us here. You can use the same function with the same name in two different classes. So I've used this get area in rectangle class, and now I'm using this get area in the circle class. So you can use the same functions in two different classes. Otherwise, Python will not allow you to basically, if you use the same name for two different functions, it will not allow you to do that if unless until you have defined them in different classes. So this concept of using the same function and it is performing two different operations is called polymorphism. Okay, so and you can call it even function overloading. Okay, in classes it is called polymorphism. Okay, so it is also called function overloading as well. So you see in the circle class the same function is performing r square radius into radius into 3.14, which is pi value. So area of circle is pi r square, and that is how we have defined the area to be in this class, that is a circle class. Okay, so this is all about definition of the classes. Okay, and uh, we now get to the initializing class objects. Okay, so how do you initialize class objects? Okay, so we have defined the functions inside classes, and then how do you access these functions outside the classes? Okay, so you do them by creating class objects or instances. Okay, you can call them instances or you can call them objects. So the simple syntax here for creating a class object is by giving the object name. You can give any object name is equal to, you can give rectangle, which is the class name, okay, and then these brackets. So this will create an object rect1 for this class rectangle. Now going forward, if we want to access any of these attributes inside rectangle class, we will use rect1. Okay, so now we use the rect1 object for length. Okay, dot length, right? So because length is an attribute of the rectangle class, so we give it a value 10, and we give rect1 dot breadth is equal to 10 as well. Okay, so uh, what reflecting back, we have given zeros here, right? So whatever you, if you don't assign these values here, and we will see what will happen, because then length and breadth values will remain zero. So by default it should have some value, so we gave while initializing, so we assigned some values here. Okay, so this is how we use the objects to change uh, variable values inside the class, which are defined inside the class. Okay, now rect1 is used to change length and breadth values as 10, right? So now these values are changed for to 10. We will now like, if you remember this show info function, right? Show info function, and it is printing you the color, right? So now this is an example of inheritance. So rect1 is an object of uh, rectangle class, right? But the rectangle class has already inherited the shape class attributes, right? So this function show info, you can now call it with rect1 because it has inherited this function. Okay, so this is how rect1 dot show, if you say rect1 dot show info, this should work as well. And when you do rect1 dot get area, where get area is this function inside the rectangle class, you will call the get area function with the values 10 and 10. Okay, and now we go back to what self is. So self is basically an instance of an object. So uh, it is just a it's a symbol that a current object is calling this function. Okay, so now this can be, this object can be any name. Okay, this can be rect1, rect2, or whatever. So the self is just the representation of the object which is calling this function get area. Okay, don't see that as a parameter. Okay, so it is a representation of this object. So now how that matters is, I'll tell you how that matters. Okay, just first we'll try to run this code as we have kind of seen this. Okay, so you see I can call show info from rect1 object, right? So it gives me the output black because it is assigned black now. So if I give this any other value, it should give me that. Okay, so if I change it to blue, I will get blue here in the output. So what is important is, you see the next one, rect1 dot get area. So we are passing the object values we assigned for the length and breadth, that is 10 and 10. We are passing it when we are calling get area from this particular object, right? So you see now length and breadth are getting replaced with 10 and 10 when we call get area. So it will give the area as 10 into 10 as 100. Okay, so let me just try to show you how it should work and how self is like a representation of the object. So if I create one more I can create different objects for the same class. Okay, I am now creating rect2 for the same class rectangle. Okay, and I am then giving the rect2 dot length value as suppose 20. Now consider this rect2 as a different rectangle to this what was this rect1. Okay, so I can do this for multiple rectangles with multiple dimensions. Okay, so if I give this rect2 the breadth similarly as suppose 30, we and I then call get area using the rect2 object. Sorry, I just copy in a new line. Okay, so now consider this object rect2 as a different rectangle. Okay, with these dimensions. So this is how objects are important. You can simply change the values and call this function inside rectangle get area again. Okay, so you have defined this new object rect2. We have given 20 and 30 as the values, and you have called get area. Okay, now 20 and 30 will be passed as length and breadth inside the class, inside this function. Okay, so we can just see simply by running this. Sorry, okay, this one. So now we get area as multiplication of 30 and 20, that is 600. So this function is working for uh, a different object, a different rectangle, I may say, with these dimensions. Okay, so you can create as many objects of this class, and it will give you the area. Okay, now where this is interesting now is also is we saw the color variable right inside the parent class shape. So let me make it something else. If we give it as orange, we run it. So now I'm using the uh, rect1 object to access. Now remember, rect1 is the object for the child class, but I can change the parent class variable color to blue. Okay. Now I've run rect1.color is equal to blue. If I run the show info function, which remember is the part of the parent class, which just prints the color. So in the self now rect1 will be passed. So now rect1.color will be printed. So let's just see. So now rect1.color should be blue. If I run show info, which is again a function of the parent class, I should get blue printed. Okay, this is how I can change parent class attributes as well as the rect1 object, which is the object of the child class, has also inherited uh, these objects, these variables like color. So whatever you define here, and you can inherit it in the child class. Okay, so that is how inheritance will work. So are there any questions here? Because we have come to end of the first example.
Any questions,
Or
team?
yeah,
I hope whatever we explained in the first one as the definition of this, what Kaushal is showing, is clear now with all the attributes declared and everything. If you have questions, please ask us. You need to understand how the hoops concept, which we would have studied during engineering, is getting applied here. Can we continue?
yeah, are we clear, guys? Or are there any questions?
For a change, can we get a reaction from all of you? Thumbs up from all your screens. Okay. Good. I got only from two of you, Aishwarya and Arishri. Anisha, thank you. Okay, good. Let's continue, Kaushal.
Okay, thank you, sir. So now we look at the object initialization for the second class. Okay, remember we created this child class circle which has the same parent shape. Okay, for now we have given the radius as 0. So let me just, if again going back to the question where somebody asked if these values are if you don't provide any values here, this area should come as 0, because by default it is it is 0. So if I remove this part, uh, yes, so the area should be 0, because uh, by default while creating those variables you have given the values as 0. Okay, so fine, we will move on to the circle class, which is again one more child of the shape class. Now get area, remember, is defined here differently. So we have defined it as pi r square because it is a circle class, right? So area of the circle should be pi r square. Okay, so uh, radius is again by default is 0, but we can change it. We go to initialization, again similar syntax. You can give any object name here and equal to the class name uh, followed by the circular brackets. So this is how you create an object, and then in the next step you can start accessing the radius variable which was there in the child class, if you remember this one. Yeah, so you can use the objects CIRC 1 dot radius, and you can assign it as 10. Okay, now show info will work similarly. It will, the color whatever you have given, for now it is orange, so it should print orange, and then get area will give you uh, pi 10 square, right? Because for this object which you are using to call get area, the radius for this object is given as 10. Okay, if I run this, right, so we get area is 314 point uh, 314.2, right? Yeah, so the this radius, you can change it, you can create one more object. So yeah, by the way, we have changed the color, right? So we have changed it to blue, and that is why it is still showing you blue. So if I maybe have to run this. So if I run this again, and right, so we get the different value for area, because we have given a different variable. Okay, why it is showing as blue? Let me just, okay, okay, fine. We'll come to that later. It's some kind of mishap between initializing of objects. If you run codes one after other, this is what happens. Sometimes the values are misplaced. Okay, so we go to this example where we have the parent class. By now, you might have gotten to clarity about the what a parent class is. So, with simple definition of employee as a class, right? So now this has the attribute company as ABC. Okay, and the by default function, which is the init function, you might have seen it there also, is here in this function. So you can use this init function to define objects uh, default variable sorry values. Okay, so as I told you, self is an object representation. So when you call uh, this function using an object, it will by default give the id value as 0 and the name as empty. Okay, so now this also has one more function which is show info, similar to what we had in the previous parent class. This is just displaying again ID, the name, and company. Now, whatever object you initialize afterwards and the values you give for IDs and ID and name will be displayed here. It depends totally on which object you're using and what values you've assigned to that object. Okay, so now you create this child class manager mgr and you give the parent class emp. And for initializing inheritance, you as before use these inbuilt functions in it and the super init function to inherit all the attributes and objects. Okay, and then by default this child class has uh, a variable called experience that is by default given a value 25. You can give any value here, and one more function which is used as display information. Now again, depending on the object, it will just display the name and experience. So name, it will get it from the uh, parent class, and experience is here by default. And if you assign an object and change this value, you will get that experience value here. Okay, when you call this display info function. All right. So again, we are creating an object for the child class, sorry, the parent class, emp. Okay, and we give the object name and then the class name, and this creates the object emp1. Then we are trying to for this object, for this particular object, we are changing the company to xyz. Okay, because this is parent class object, it can do that. Even a child class object can do that. So we'll if you print emp1 dot company, you should get xyz here because we have changed the value. Okay, so so this is how this object is using the parent class. Okay, uh, any doubts still here? Any doubts, guys? Are you able to understand everything?
Kaushal, should we take a break now?
Yeah, we can just finish this part of the code and then we
Okay,
can take
okay.
it.
Okay, good. No worries. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So now we are creating an object creating this object for the child class. Okay, remember the child class mgr. So we are creating this object, and then we are printing the name and experience attributes. Name it has inherited from the parent class, uh, right? And experience, it had the attribute experience by itself. Okay, so we if you run this, you see the name is not has not been printed. There is only 25 here. Can anybody tell why it is? It's actually visible on the screen. Why did we not get any print for the name? Giving you a hint now. So the reason why we didn't get it, because it is empty here, right? Yes, correct, Vishnu. So this self.name is empty for now, right? And while creating this object, we did not give any name. Okay. So if we give this name to it, so see, why after initializing the object, we are giving the name to this object as Rohit. So you will get that name then. Okay, it will store it with that object. So then again, similarly, we just gave the name as different name, and we are accessing both the child class and the parent class functions to print information, and this should work as fine. Okay. So display info is child class function. You can see you have given the name as Manish. So Manish came up, and then the experience 25, right? And then the second function was show info, which is part of the parent class, and the information there is ID, name, and company. Okay, so then ID, name, and company came. ID is by default defined as 0, and that is why it is 0 now. Okay, so fine. With that, we have come to an end with regards to uh, classes and objects. Uh, as for other modules and sessions, we have some questions for you here. So you can try them and let us know uh, if you face any problems with them.